it's tough, I think, for the public to understand what type of influence Jeffrey Epstein sought and gained with powerful people. That was sort of his scheme.
New Jeffrey Epstein documents were unsealed on Wednesday night that contain around 200 names of people who are associated with the convicted sex offender who died in prison. To break down what these files mean and how they could impact some of the most powerful figures named, like Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, and Prince Andrew, I am joined by Arick Fudali of the Bloom firm, who represented several Epstein accusers. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So there's a lot of talk about the Epstein files and what they are, and we keep hearing about a list, but really, what are these files?
It's a great question because I keep hearing lists. People keep asking me, where's the list? What's this list? There is no quote unquote list as if it's some sort of black book that Epstein, kept of all of his associates and all the people that he provided women to. That is absolutely not what we have. What it is it's discovery materials, meaning it's deposition transcripts, it's emails, it's notes, it's letters, it's what we call in the legal world sort of evidence for a case that is finally being unsealed and unredacted by a judge. And within these deposition transcripts, within this quote unquote evidence, you see names. For instance, Epstein might mention a name in an email. A witness or a victim might mention a name in a sworn deposition. That's what we're saying. So it's not a list. You really have to read through it and sort of find names where they're mentioned.
So again, we're hearing about prominent names being mentioned in terms of Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Donald Trump. It's really important to reference again, this is not a list of a black book that, let's say, a madam was keeping of clients. This is all about what's in context. And again, we're going to get into it, some of those names that I just mentioned. But why did the court release the Epstein files now?
That's a really great question, and I'm not exactly sure as to what the timing, specifically. What I can say is typically U.S. courts have an aura of openness, right? That's sort of part of our Constitution, that the court should be open and the information should be public. There are instances, like in this case, when you're dealing with highly sensitive information that could cause shame and embarrassment to certain victims, or could put people in danger, or that sort of thing, where the courts are sometimes more inclined to keep them private. The courts did appear to keep these documents private at first, but it looks like through some efforts of the Miami Herald and some of the other advocates of the victims that the court was finally convinced to sort of release all of these documents, or at least some of the documents, and finally reveal these names. And sort of the buildup of all of this, as this has been happening for years and years, I think has contributed to the sensationalism of it all.
There are about over 900 pages. A lot of this, from what I've gone through so far, I'm not through all the documents yet. It's a lot of repetitive, like you said, videotape transcript of depositions that occurred years ago. What has been found in the filings so far?
Really nothing I would call a bombshell. It's a lot of confirmation of names we've already heard. Certainly it's different to see names on paper than it is to just have speculation. But the coverage of Epstein has been so robust for so many years, and there's been so many rumors and and confirmed reports of who he associated with him, who he associated with. Nothing is shocking about the names we've seen. Of course, there was a widely publicized, lawsuit against Prince Andrew, so there's nothing shocking there. My understanding is, I think former President Bill Clinton didn't even object to the name, to those documents being released, and he's made statements about, of course, denying his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, since the early 2000s. So there's really nothing shocking, and it's important, anyone who's investigated Epstein like I have for so many years, representing so many victims, is Epstein associated himself with really powerful, high-profile people, and you could argue that Epstein himself was a high-profile, powerful person, and he would use that power and that influence and use that to control his victims. For instance, when he'd invite victims over to his home in New York City, he'd show them pictures of him shaking hands with dignitaries and former presidents and very powerful people around the world, and that caused a great fear in the victims to ever speak out against him.
Mm-hmm. You represented several Epstein accusers. Did anything shock you from these newly released files? Based on what you said, no.
No, nothing shocked me from these new files. What I would say from the victim's perspective, though, is there's always an interest in more exposure and
Mhm.
exposing those who associated with Jeffrey Epstein and exposing more of his crimes, and the crimes that Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of. On the other side of it, though, the victims are sort of they'd like some closure. They've been suffering for a long time, not just from the abuse, but from the aftermath of the abuse. They were denied their chance at justice when Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. They were able to get some civil remedy for the most part from the claim, the Epstein fund that was created after his death. There was some sense of justice when Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted. But now the more it goes on and on, every time they have to turn on the TV and see Epstein's face or open the newspaper or open up Twitter and see his name everywhere, it really is counter to the closure they want.
Mhm.
So, from the victim's perspective, it's certainly nice to see more and more exposure, but I'm really looking for closure for them. We can finally put an end to this sort of sensationalist coverage, almost this memification of Epstein coverage.
Have you heard from any of the women that you represented since the filings have come out?
I have. I actually spoke to one this morning, and she echoed that same sentiment. That yeah, it's nice to see more exposure. It's nice to see people exposed who are associated with such a monster like Jeffrey Epstein. But the way the media sort of has handled just Epstein and generally in this the grandiosity of this list that everyone was expecting, I think they'd mostly prefer just some closure and so they can move on from their lives and keep Epstein away because Epstein exerted real control and fear of these victims, even beyond the grave. It's really compelling to
Mm.
see how much fear a lot of these victims had of him and who he may or may not have been associated with.
Right. Do you know of any high profile names that fought to hide their identities? Like you mentioned, Bill Clinton didn't fight to hide his identity from what you know.
Correct. I don't know specifically. I know that I believe there are two does who have fought for anonymity, and I believe those are under appeal, and the court is evaluating them. I, of course, do not know the actual identity of those does, so I don't know what their involvement is, whether they are victims who wanted to remain anonymous, associates, people, or both. I don't know.
Again, we're going to go back to the context of these documents. And there's an excerpt from an Epstein accuser, Joanna Schoberg's deposition that stated Epstein told her that Bill Clinton, and this is a quote, likes them young, referring to girls. Do you think Clinton can or will face any legal repercussions?
Certainly not based on what's been revealed in these documents. I found nothing in my review of them and in the reporting of them that would suggest that Bill Clinton or anyone, any person who's been named or associated with Jeffrey Epstein, at least at this point, is going to
Mhm.
face any further investigation or anything criminal.
So you think a lot of this is just redundant, at least for what any legal counsel knew or court knew. This is really just for public interest. There's really nothing, there's no ramifications in your legal perspective that can really hit any of the names that are mentioned.
I think that's correct. I mean, of course, like I think I said earlier, there is a difference between speculation and rumors
Mhm.
of someone being associated, and then a little different than seeing it on paper. But Epstein emailing someone or someone referenced in an actual deposition. I mean, so I guess there's some significance, or you could read into the importance of that. But beyond just seeing the name on paper, I don't expect any real ramifications for anyone beyond this, at least on what's been revealed so far.
Right. I mean, when you look at someone like there's Alan Dershowitz, former Harvard law professor, who Jane Doe 3 claims she was forced to sleep with in a 2014 filing, and the document also claimed Dershowitz was an eyewitness to sexual abuse of other minors. The lawyer has denied all wrongdoing. There was even a statement that maybe one of the accusers got it wrong. Does this change anything for him?
I don't think so. I really don't. I honestly don't think it changes anything for any of the what we'll call people who were associated with Jeffrey Epstein or alleged to be associated with Jeffrey Epstein. Nothing in the documents that I've reviewed really changes anything significantly other than just actually seeing again names on paper as opposed to just hearing verbal allegations, hearing rumors, out seeing things on Twitter. You can actually see the documents with certain names mentioned, but again, just because you're an associate of Jeffrey Epstein doesn't mean you did anything wrong, didn't mean you were a criminal. You know, it's tough, I think, for the public to understand what type of influence Jeffrey Epstein sought and gained with powerful people. That was sort of his scheme. He didn't just use victims, he used other people in his orbit. He was a real manipulator.
Mhm.
And he used his money and his influence to gain powerful, influential friends, and then used all that to sort of create this aura and this circle and this scheme of sex trafficking for himself. He sexually abused a lot of women, multiple women for decades. And his power and influence was a big part of that.
Summing this all up for you as someone who's represented Epstein accusers, what you're looking for closure for them, some sort of closure that they could possibly get, some sort of healing. This document dump, in lack of a better term, is there any revelation? Is there anything that can help perpetuate that healing, or is this really just reopening a lot of wounds?
Uh, I think it might be. I don't think there's anything specifically in the documents that's going to perpetuate healing. I don't think there's any I told you so moments for
Mhm.
really any of the victims, because all of the allegations have been so widely publicized, and there's no real new substantial allegations, within these documents from what I could tell. So I really think it's more just, putting Epstein again in the spotlight, 4 years after his death. I don't really think there's much healing quality to any of this for the victims. I mean, I suppose the more exposure, the more people understand about the breadth of his scheme and what he did and his abuse is good. The public should know about what a monster he was, but I don't think there's anything in these documents that are really where the victims can say, oh great, I'm so glad this is out there, or anything along those lines. It's really more just having to see his name and face everywhere for another few days.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us and for your insight.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.